Iowa natives spent their lives looking for a cup race. They cuss, kick the dust, say they ain't coming to this place. Far from a big city, but nobody complains. 'Cause now we all know Iowa's a good thing. Iowa makes corn, corn makes fuel for racing. Racing at short tracks makes us a little frisky. Newton roads clogging up, grandstands filling up. We watch them go 3 wide. This Speedway sure ain't died. Start ordering your tickets for $25. How was a good thing?
Maybe it takes a little bit of whiskey to get me a little freaky to listen to Michael Massie sing about Iowa. Hello, everyone, and welcome on into the Happy Hour podcast. Caleb Barnes was supposed to join us, but he just bounced out, probably because he has internet issues. So he maybe will jump back in a moment. But as always, Michael Massie, M_Massie22, singing eloquently like he always does. And then our guest this week, a very fun one, Brandon Brown, the general manager for South Boston Speedway. Do want to plug this? I'll plug it multiple times. South Boston has the Thunder Road Harley-Davidson 200, the first leg of the Virginia Late Model Triple Crown, coming up June 29th. Massie will be there. There's Caleb. He had him right back in. He's having some internet issues. I see the comments already popping in the front stretch garage. Got Sean in there. Got our guy Wyatt Watson, of course, the front stretch in there as well. But Brandon, thanks so much for joining us. I will say this. Despite the fact you are a West Virginia graduate, we are very honored for you to join us, and I hope you have some fun tonight.
Yeah, you two turkeys. Yeah, great to be here, guys. I was raced alongside Massie for quite a few years, but I think this is my first time talking to you guys.
Yeah, we're excited. So race is a loose term. I always say you got wrecked by Michael Massie. That's probably more accurate.
A few times.
Hey, it goes both ways, right?
All I know is anytime that Massie's introduced me to someone, be like, I've raced them on iRacing. The next thing I just simply ask, were you wrecked by them? And so far, 100% of the responses have been yes. So it's a really good scientific poll I have going.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you're still batting 1,000, Massie, for whoever. So because I'm still one of them.
Hey, I was one of the least squirrel people in that league. So.
Yeah, you were steady. At least you weren't all over the place. Like, and you weren't out there just junking everybody like a few people I know. So
yeah, we don't have enough time to list all the people.
Colin.
Well, let's dive right into the show. Fun show packed for you. As always, sit back, relax, crack open that cold one, unless you're driving, of course, or you're Caleb, because here we practice responsibility or underage drinking.
Trey, you know I'm older than 21, right? I don't know why I haven't mentioned that before now, but I've graduated college. I'm older than, I'm sorry.
You got a young face, I guess. To be fair, he said, I don't drink when I asked that. So I assumed. So that is true. And so Caleb is of age, but chooses not to drink, which is okay. He likes his Mountain Dew. I'm not even drinking tonight. I'm drinking some Powerade. So let's dive right on into our first purple drink. Yeah. Hey, when I was at camp back in the day, purple drink was the thing. Let's dive into our first topic. So over the last couple of months, we've seen Bo Pollard as well as Carson Kvapil, as well as Butterbean make some starts in the national series on the NASCAR level. Brandon, obviously being the GM of South Boston Speedway, wanted to highlight those guys and talk maybe about more opportunities for them in the national NASCAR series.
Yeah, I think that's what you want to see, right? Is these really great grassroots racers make it to the NASCAR National Series on merit. I mean, on speed. That's what our fan base is all about, right? Rooting for the everyman, the what did Ken Squire say? The common man doing uncommon deeds, that type of thing. You're rooting for the underdog. So you saw the reaction when Butterbean got out of the truck after his great run at North Wilkesboro. The place was going nuts for him on pit road. Like they recognized what that meant. And I think that's great to see. I mean, you've got people like Dale Earnhardt Jr. using his influence, power, whatever you want to call it, to put deserving drivers in the seat of that 88 Xfinity Series car, like a Bubba Pollard, who had, as great as he is as a super late model driver, had never gotten any opportunities in the Xfinity Series. And then now you've got a driver like Carson Quapple coming up through Junior Motorsports, what he did for Josh Berry. I think that should, we got to turn the model back on its head, essentially, and that needs to be the default model. How do you get there? I don't know. It's just what you want as a fan. So I think that's just really cool to see. Obviously, we're looking forward to having all of those grassroots racers in the Thunder Road Harley Davidson 200 coming up here on Saturday, June 29th. That's my first plug. I was right. But
we need a counter. We need a counter.
You're right. And if you saw, I put underneath my name instead of my handle. Come see us. Anyway, but I think that's what you want, right? You want that to be the case. And I think as you see that, you see Butterbean now getting a couple more opportunities in that Tricon truck. And one of those is going to be Nashville right before our race on June 28th. The first thing that I did when I saw that, I texted Lee Pulliam, "You guys are still coming, right?" Like, because I mean, he's got such a following, and we can't wait to see him here. So it's pretty cool, and I want to see that continue.
Yeah, I think it's definitely better than it was a couple years ago, right? You never saw. I mean, otherwise, you would have seen guys like a Peyton Sellers or someone like that get more opportunities and good equipment. And, some of those guys, those grassroots guys, did get to run races a couple years ago, but it was always in like back marker or mid-tier kind of equipment. So to see Pollard and Quaffle and Butterbean, like, those are good teams. Junior Motorsports, Tricon Garage, that's top of the line in the Xfinity and Truck Series. Mm-hmm. It's definitely getting better. And I think that, like, Carson Quaffle, I really feel like he'll be able to translate that into a full-time Xfinity ride, at least at some point. Maybe at Junior Motorsports, maybe somewhere else, I don't know. And Butterbean, I feel like he could maybe turn that into something as well. And what I would like to see, though, is it still feels like some of these guys are written off after they're 30, right? Like the reason Quaffle and Butterbean are appealing is because they're still under 25. Whereas, like, I don't know that Bubba Pollard is going to get a full-time opportunity or a ton of more opportunities in there because he's in his late 30s. So I do wish that, like, that stigma would go away because, Josh Berry did go against the norm, and then he was already 30. And that's awesome to see. And look how it's paying off. I thought for a little bit he was going to win the race the other night at Iowa Speedway. So hopefully that could be the start to kind of the change in the trend to where you do see some of these guys get more of these opportunities.
Yeah, I was going to say the perfect example was Josh Berry. I mean, he gets the opportunity. He makes the most of it, which I think is a really big thing, which I would argue Butterbean, Carson Quapple, and Bubba Pollard all made the most of it so far. Like, there was a point at Martinsville where I thought Carson Quapple was going to win the race. There's a Josh Berry won at Martinsville, obviously in the Xfinity Series, won multiple times in the Xfinity Series, goes up to Cup, performs really well, filling in for Chase, and then obviously I think has done as well as possible considering all the circumstances, that is at his SHR this year. And, Massie's right. There was a chance he was going to win the race. And I mean, he's probably been the best performing rookie this year. It's between him and Hocevar. And it proves that you give good race car drivers great opportunities, that it allows, their talent to show if you give them good rides. And I think one thing that I am happy about with becoming more ingrained in the motorsports community, becoming a part of frontstretch.com, is understanding and Brendan, you probably can talk about this better than any of us. The talent at the short track level is so deep. It's so, I mean, there are, you look at a Brent Cruz is just like, he's coming, like he's that good. And you still got Carson Quapple, you have Butterbean, you have a Bubba Pollard, you have, all these drivers that probably could race on Sundays, but unfortunately, because of the way the modern landscape of motorsports are, it's just not in the cards for them. But you have a guy like a Dale Earnhardt Jr. I think the fact that you have Dale Earnhardt Jr., Travis, I was about to say Travis Marks.
Justin?
Justin Marks, and Jeff Burton and Kevin Harvick all invested in the Cars Tour. Well, that's 4 guys who have a lot of connections in the Cup Series. And I think that's going to help feed the Cup Series well. Obviously, Toyota still going to be heavily involved in their development. So I think it's getting better. It's getting a lot better than it was probably mid-2010s. And you're going to see, like, we'll see what happens with Butterbean when he goes to a 1.5 miles in a truck. And does he perform as well as he did at North Wilkesboro? And I think also these guys are being a lot smarter with their opportunities. Massie talked about it. Like, they're typically picking, instead of picking like 6 races just to get 6 races in mid-tier equipment, they might pick 1 race in top-tier equipment, but they're picking it at tracks where they have a lot of experience. Butterbean at North Wilkesboro, Quapple at Martinsville, and then obviously Bubba Pollard didn't race at Richmond before, but he's raced at so many short tracks, and Richmond, he knows it enough that he can get the job done.
Well, and I think something else that could be done to help bridge that gap is taking the truck series and doing more of these one-off races at some of these more local short tracks. I'm fine with the way that the Xfinity series is run and that current car runs on the bigger tracks and the way it's a companion to the Cup Series. But a lot of these truck events, some of the triple headers are still pretty fun. But sometimes whenever it's like just the truck paired with the Cup race, sometimes the truck race I feel like gets lost a little bit, especially like whenever the trucks, I think they go to Kansas twice a season. They don't go many places 2 times a year, but I think the trucks should focus more on trying to get back to what they used to do and going to these shorter tracks kind of on their own. Maybe they pair with the Cars Tour. Maybe they are just going for a one-off weekend by themselves. But I think that would also encourage more of these short track guys to hop in the cars on these short tracks to give them opportunities to showcase what they can do. Because when we saw that in the Xfinity or the Busch Series, as it was called back then, we did see more of those guys whenever they would go to their one-off road course race or their one-off short track. We saw them having to pull in more guys to those lower series because the Cup guys, some of them would make the effort to get there, but then a lot of them wouldn't make the effort as much. So I think making that a possibility in the truck series would really help bridge the gap for these feeder series or for these short track guys to get into the NASCAR and to not just the ARCA series where maybe they're not going to get as much attention, but one of the top 3 NASCAR touring series where they can really show, like Butterbean a few weeks ago, hey, here's what this guy can do when he gets in top tier equipment.
Yeah. I was going to say, Brandon, do you know any track?
Is it me?
Well, go ahead.
On that, I obviously we would love that. Like we would, if we could have the truck series here, next year, we would explore that. But you got to look at it this way: a track like ours in South Boston, or a Langley, or Hickory, or anywhere, to accommodate today's modern needs for safety and accommodations for fans, we would need a capital investment from NASCAR to install safer barriers, for example. Like we would need that commitment from NASCAR to do that, and it's possible. It's a possibility that could be something on down the road. But that's got to be taken into consideration as well. And then, we've got to deliver on our end by marketing the event and making sure that we all can get a return on our investment. So from our side, I think that my philosophy is, and it's always been that way, whether I was working at Chicagoland or North Wilkesboro or Richmond or wherever, is that my marketing philosophy is we got to be hero makers, right? And I think over 15 years ago, as we saw a big turnover with NASCAR, the focus went more towards, say, the playoffs and stuff rather than building up, heroes from the grassroots. And so if we can do that, if we can make our local short track racers into heroes through, our marketing efforts, digital platforms and stuff, and then they make it to the truck series, I think that's a viable option. I think it would be cool as hell to have the truck series here. They told us, we can have a truck series race after your Thunder Road race next week. I'd be like, let's do it. But maybe that's something we can explore down the road. But I just want to see these really, really talented racers be able to get these opportunities, whether it's one-offs or a full season, like a Lane Riggs, for example. We forgot to talk about Lane.
Yeah.
I mean, Lane's our track champion from 2 years ago. He goes and through opportunities with Kevin Harvick in that 62 late model last year, parlays that into a relationship with Ford and then with Front Row. And he struggled to start the season, but now you've seen him like running very, very well. And that is the type of opportunity that we need to just keep facilitating and trying to continue.
Yeah, anything else, Massie?
I'll just say you won't find a bigger advocate to have a truck race at South Boston Speedway than this guy right here. I'd sell off a couple kidneys and
a couple of kidneys. Well, you wouldn't be able to get to watch the race then. But
I was gonna say, would you do a Mike Vrabel for a championship? cut your lower extremity off.
What do you mean by that, Trey?
You never heard the story that he said on a podcast that he cut his penis off to win a championship?
Well, there you go. You said.
Would you cut your penis off for a race at South Boston?
No, no.
I'm just seeing how dedicated you are, old man. Okay.
I don't know about all that. Let's move this thing along.
How do I transition from that?
Quickly.
Speaking of short track racing, I guess is the way to do it. And I got it. Speaking of tracks we wanted to see get national races or more national races, Iowa was on that list before this past season. And this past weekend, it tended to deliver a really, really good race with a lot of worry coming in, giving we'll say Frankenstein-like repave that it had at Iowa Speedway. Obviously, Michael Massie cried when he found out Rusty Wallace designed Iowa and the fact that he gave the command. He was crying during the command. He sent me the video of it because he loves Rusty so much. So
Rusty was my childhood hero too, right?
Well, it's his true love. Is Rusty Wallace?
He's a Rusty fan as I was.
Okay, well, y'all two can fight over him. But Massie, you wanted to talk about Iowa, and maybe the fact that we had some great quality racing throughout could give us a taste of what we could see maybe at other short tracks.
Well, yeah, so first off, like the pavement did its job. It provided good racing. It provided multiple lines. I mean, if you want a case in point, just look at Kyle Larson the other night, the way he was carving through the field, making moves wherever. Like Josh Berry made some crazy passes. So it really raced well. And it has me thinking that maybe like Richmond Raceway would consider a repave. Then maybe that would spice things up there to get the racing to that level that Iowa was this past weekend. Because the repaves have been hitting it out the park lately. I know for a long time it was, a track gets repaved, you're like, oh man, it's gonna stink for the next 5 to 10 years. But now look at it. I mean, North Wilkesboro I thought was an improvement. Sonoma, that was probably the best Sonoma race we've seen in I don't know how long. And then Iowa, it was a really good job. So really, I think they have come a long way with the repave technology to where it's delivering right away. The other thing I wanted to say about Iowa was that it didn't have, it wasn't Bristol. It didn't have 100,000 grandstands. It didn't have all the fancy amenities. I believe I heard someone say the press box was just like an open air box with like no AC or no TVs or anything. It didn't have all this fancy stuff. That it put on a great event. It's sold out. even with less grandstands, it seemed like a rowdy crowd because it was just packed to the core. So that gives me optimism that more of these short tracks, where, the whole thing has been, well, they only have, 10,000 stands or, seats or something like that, or 20,000 seats, whatever, that it tells me they can have races at those types of facilities, and that it would give off like a rowdy vibe, and you don't need all the fancy gadgets and up to date suites and stuff like that. Like, you can still throw on a really great race weekend without all that stuff. So I don't know, maybe my opinion differs from you guys. Where do you stand on, first off, the pavement, and then second off, like, the amenities and all that?
I think the pavement, Iowa and Wilkesboro and some of these repaves, I think they can provide a blueprint, not just for Richmond or maybe some of these other short tracks, but really a lot of these NASCAR tracks, whenever we go to repaves, is with the progressive banking that we've seen. They threw that into North Wilkesboro, and I know a lot of people complained about that race because there wasn't as much there, but I thought we saw some great action. And if we had a full field of cars at Wilkesboro like we did in the truck race, I think that would have been another incredible Cup short track next gen race. And then Iowa, I mean, they didn't pave all the way out. I can't imagine what that would have been like if they were able to use all of the track width, because that's a pretty wide short track there. That would have been an incredible thing to see this year. And it was still wide enough for these guys to go 3 wide this year. So when we go back next year, I think it'll be even better. We can see how many lanes these guys can use. But I think the progressive banking has really been a revolution for a lot of these tracks. We've seen it used at Kansas. I believe we see it at Las Vegas now. They threw it into Bristol, and some of the places it does kind of become overpowering a little bit as the pavement wears. So that's a slight concern there, but it's really been a revelation. And even as the pavement wears, like at Kansas, you still see guys on the short runs be able to use the inside, and you still see them be able to kind of poke their nose out a little bit and get a little clean air on the nose with this next gen car that has been so aero dependent. So I think that's where, looking at Iowa and looking at these other places, like, you could learn and maybe try to apply it to Richmond, even though I do like the pavement at Richmond. It's another one of those, like, again, when it's hard to see those old paved track or those old service tracks. What? Well, I like Look, okay. I'm not insulting Richmond. I'm saying it's hard to see the old pavement go away, because the old pavement really makes the drivers work with their tires. But yeah.
Was that someone calling to say they're doing the race?
That was my girlfriend.
Uh-oh, you better answer that.
I told her I was podcasting with you guys. I don't know what else I could do.
But yeah, I don't know. And then as far as the amenities go, I think as long as the racing and the environment is good enough, sometimes the older stuff, at least for a little bit, it's kind of feels cool and vintage and rugged, which then after you go there for a while, then you're like, all right, let's maybe work on this a little bit. But as far as the racing and everything, what did you think about what you saw at Iowa this week, Brandon?
Well, let me tell you this. When they first showed those first videos and photos of the partial repave, I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Like, it was, just from looking at it, just not seeing any racing, not seeing nothing, just looking at it and knowing how Iowa used to act with that top lane, having the momentum, being able to run the bottom and dive bomb and do all that stuff. And then seeing the only 2 usable lanes, because when you saw it, you knew those 2 lanes are going to have grip, and the top lane, you're not going to be able to use it all. Like, that's just the way it was going to be. And then seeing that, I was like, holy cow, this is going to be a boring race. It's going to be aero dependent. You're not going to be able to pass. Like I've been looking forward to a Cup race at Iowa forever, but just because I thought that the track was deserving of a Cup race, because it puts on such great racing. And then I was like, oh, they screwed it up. And then I was like, okay, let's reserve some judgment. And then they had 3.5-ish lanes to use to run. And it was a ridiculously entertaining race. Like, I'm more on the line of, like, I find good in, like, every one of the races. Like, even like the most boring races. I could pick out like good parts, but that was a genuinely entertaining race from start to finish. I thought the Xfinity was really good. I thought the Cup race was really good, especially with the short track package that has come under a lot of scrutiny, deservedly so, I think, for the product of racing. And I think you're right that progressive banking, did its job, but I can't wait to see when they have, because I think they will. I mean, based on the recommendations from everybody, repave the entirety of the corner all the way up, and I think you'll see an even better race next time. In terms of the progressive banking at Richmond, I mean, it's like, what happened? Like, you watch early 2000s, 1990s, whatever races at Richmond. It's the same Richmond, but that track was built when those cars were high up off the ground, when you had a ton of ride height, when it wasn't so air dependent, when you had a lot of horsepower, you didn't have a whole lot of grip. And now it's like almost we've got to change the track to suit the car, rather than them doing the opposite. So I think if they were going to do that, I remember back, it was 2017, the day race when it was so hot, they were using all the entirety of the lanes at Richmond. You put in progressive, hypothetically speaking, because, it's millions of dollars to pave a racetrack. But if you were to do it tomorrow, I say put some progressive banking in Richmond. That's what Rusty based the track off of. Richmond wider with progressive banking. So if you're going to do that, why not do it? Give the fans that show. But yeah, it's something that's got to. Poor Richmond. I love that place so much. It's gotten the short end of the stick from a lot of years, and maybe a progressive repave is the way to go. I think that progressive banking's done wonders, like you said.
Yeah, I jokingly tweeted or texted, a group that includes Michael Massie. I was like, I think Richmond figured it out. They just need to, repave the corners, and they'll be ready. They'll have a great race. Yeah. And I think it proved that's it. Like, I love Richmond. I know I've been, as someone who has grown up in the Richmond area, whose first races were at Richmond. It's the track that I'm never going to say anything bad about that place, because it's the place I fell in love with this sport.
Same here. September 9th, 1995, my first Cup race, Richmond race.
May 15th, 2004 is my first Cup race.
I don't remember the date, but it was the.
I had a birthday party.
Why don't you?
Mine was a birthday party. That's all I can remember. Race was won by Dale Jr. So how about that?
I was at that race, by the way.
So technically you're at my birthday party, Brandon.
I was at your birthday party, yeah.
My first Cup one was the Ricky Rudd, Kevin Harvick, the second time they had to run it. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, we could spend the whole hour talking about how great Richmond is. Don't worry. But I agree. I think Iowa proved it. Like, I was a big Richmond, and that's where I was like going back and watching the Xfinity Series races there. I was like, I said it last week. I said, I think this can produce really, really good racing, but I know the Xfinity Series will deliver, because it always does, but I'm not sure about the Cup race, and it proved it. It was a great race. I mean, Bristol was probably the best short track race this year in the next gen era. This was clearly the second best. And looking at Jeff Gluck's poll, I think it was hovering 91% the last time I checked at yes. Like, this was a really, really good race that featured really good racing throughout. You had comers and goers. You had, I think, the perfect amount of threat of a tire blowing. Like, if you get a little bit more tire wear, I think you're perfect. But I'd rather have a race with the threat of a tire blowing than the fact that they're going to run qualifying laps the whole time. And it was perfect. And you may be able to question NASCAR's judgment on a couple of caution calls, but if that's the biggest negative at a race, then I'm really, really happy about it. So I think it proves it'll come back next year, which is good, because I'd rather see this than another road course. And I think the Midwest, as someone who got to live in the Midwest for a year, is a really great fan base for this sport. And Iowa's a perfect place for them to have a really good race.
At the hotel I was at this weekend in Iowa, I overheard some people talking at the continental breakfast, sitting there, the people next table over. They had gone to the race the day before, and they were people that were fans. They were talking about they were fans back in the 2000s and had just kind of fallen out of touch with it. And then they went to this race. So like, that just shows, putting that race there, you are drawing back in maybe some fans you lost along the way. So just wanted to
And USA got its highest rating for this race, I think, ever. So like it was like 2 point something. Like it was bigger than it was last year. So that means more people watched it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, moving to our next topic as we are having some fun here. Ford is back, at least on tracks under 1.5 miles. Obviously, with the Ryan Blaney win, you could argue he should have won it 2 of the last 3 weeks. At least wins this week. Obviously, Austin Cindric got it done. You have Brad Keselowski, who won recently. Buescher basically could have won Darlington. Caleb, you wanted to talk about the resurgence of Ford, especially at tracks that are maybe under 1.5 miles.
Yeah, so to start the season, the Fords looked undrivable. I mean, you barely saw them in the top 10, and when you did, it was like Noah Gragson or the SHR, like some of those guys. And you weren't seeing the Penske guys. They were kind of struggling with their cars, and the RFK guys. But then as the season's gone on, they've done what they've done pretty much every year with the next-gen cars. They start off slow, but then however they do it, they close that gap and they bring it back, and then they get their first win somewhere, and then all of a sudden something flips the switch and they are competitive on the short tracks. And we've seen this. It feels like year after year. We didn't really notice it as much the first year just because it was so new. But then last year, we really noticed it whenever Ford came on late with Ryan Blaney and won the championship. And it's looking that way again. I know earlier in the season, the Toyotas were probably the best on the short tracks. They won all but one short track race this year, points paying short track races, that is anyways. But then there was only one Toyota in the top 10. It was Christopher Bell. Behind that, Martin Truex Jr. was the next Toyota in 15th. And then all of them were back behind. So not necessarily using Iowa as the playbook for the rest of the season, but the past few races where Fords have been better at these short tracks, but really even improve their 1.5 mile program as well. Are we going to ride the dark horses? Are they going to gallop to Phoenix for a third straight championship? Are the Fords competitive again? What do you guys think?
Take it away, Brandon.
Oh, boy. All right. You knew they were going to figure it out. Like, we knew that they were going to figure it out. As bad as they ran to start the season, like, it was only a matter of time before Ford Performance got their stuff together and they were going to be a contender. It has been interesting to see because you all often associate Ford with those Michigan-type tracks, the big horsepower tracks where you can just outrun somebody. But they have run well at, Joey dominated the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro. Gateway's not a short track, but it's that type of track. Iowa, Blaney wins. And it's interesting that's where their strength has been in the past, few races. You see, like the last was a 5. I got the stats up right here. You've seen, Bell wins the 600. He had a really good car. Like, you don't know what was going to happen at the end of that race, but like you've got Toyota, Ford, and Chevy, kind of all there together. It's too early to tell, guys. We can make our predictions, but it's like way too early. Like, there's going to be like all this throughout, like, and then you might have a team of, it could be a Penske team like Joey, like, for example, like they find it and then he makes the playoffs and then just does this. I couldn't tell you. I'm just going to sit back as a fan and just like enjoy the ride. But I will say, like as bad as Penske was to start the year, as bad as they ran, like I was sitting back there like they're going to figure it out, and they did.
Yeah, and even like the 600, that thing kept going. Keselowski seemed like he was getting better as the night went on, so he might have been, who knows? He might have won the thing. But yeah, it's like you say, Penske, they always figure it out. And, I think it is. I think the first, this is just me just throwing something out there at dartboard. first couple months of the season, the big thing at Penske, the Indy 500. After that, it's NASCAR time. So it lines up. They've taken off since that Memorial Day weekend. But the other Fords, we've seen every year the RFK guys, they're better by the end of the year than they started the year. And now they keep getting better each year. So, I think they'll be championship level by the end of the season. And then next year, they might come out the gate, really firing. The only one I'm concerned about is the one that won't be around next year, Stewart Haas Racing. And it's just I just feel like eventually, as people on the team take new jobs or start looking elsewhere, start looking out the door to the future, they might get understaffed. It might not be as skilled of people working there as maybe you lose some people. So I'm a little worried about them maintaining the speed, but I didn't even expect them to be this competitive since announcing the news. Saying Barry and Briscoe is pretty good too. I thought he was pretty fast. Barry the other night, you could make a case that maybe he could have won that race, like we said. I do think that as long as he's got Rodney Childers on that pit box, they've got a shot. That's a guy to watch to steal a playoff spot for sure coming up. But like you said, Brandon, it is too early to tell who. Every week you could argue for a different championship favorite, pretty much.
As a fan, you like that. If you throw out your favorite driver, whoever that might be. As a fan, don't you love that? This isn't F1. This isn't Max Verstappen just blowing everybody away every week by 10 seconds. You want that, right?
Yeah, let's revisit the mysterious Dalton Hopkins favorite topic each week. Is Ryan Blaney the championship favorite after winning in Iowa?
Yeah.
So
2 weeks ago, Austin Cindric was the championship favorite.
Exactly. But I think Ford has made a resurgence. Now, have they dug themselves too deep of a hole? And the one person that might have dug themselves too deep of a hole is Joey Logano, because he is still outside the playoff bubble. And it's going to be between him and Bubba Wallace unless someone else wins, but behind them. So maybe did Austin Cindric take, Joey's spot in the playoffs? That's the one place where I'm we will see what happens, because I think it just depends on the style of track, who has a better week. And, those two are going to be contending with each other for that, maybe that last spot in points. But that's the only spot where I'm concerned when it comes to Ford. Blaney was maximizing results earlier in the year, and he finally got a win. You give Cindric a lot of credit for, he didn't luck into that win at Gateway. He was really good at Gateway. And, RFK has been the best Ford team this year. And even if you look deep into Ford, and we're about to talk about him. So maybe I'll just say this and then we can transition to the next topic. Is you look at Justin Haley, he's having a really good year with Rick Ware, which is honestly showing Ford is having speed even at their lower tier teams where you're not used to. Justin Haley was a top 10 car yesterday most of that race, and he's been really good as of weeks have gone on. Caleb, before we go to silly season, speaking of Justin Haley, anything else you wanted to add about this topic?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like you kind of mentioned, Ford has really had speed almost across the board, except for maybe the 15 car and the 21. All the other Fords have shown the capabilities to run inside the top 15, even inside the top 10, and leading laps this year and qualifying well. But we've seen them really start to put together races recently. I think New Hampshire, maybe it's not the most interesting track for a lot of people, but I think it'll be a fascinating race to watch, because the Toyota struggled so much last weekend, but New Hampshire's been a really good Toyota track. It's also been a pretty decent Ford track. It's been a really bad track, I feel like, for Chevys for the last few years with the next gen and everything. And that was the last thing I was going to touch on, is on the flip side of Ford. It's been surprising to me that I feel like Chevrolet, they also follow the same pattern of they start off really quick on the short tracks, but then as the year goes on, they seemingly, I don't know if the other cars catch up or if they fall behind, but then by the end of the season, you've got Fords dominating the short tracks and Toyotas dominating the short tracks, and the Chevys are like, hey, like, how are we going to find a way back to contend at Phoenix again? But I think those are all great points that you all made as we get ready to talk about silly season.
So yeah, Justin Haley enters the rumors of silly season. So does Chase Briscoe. So those are I think the two big ones as we enter silly season, as it enters my turn to do this. Door Bumper Clear decided to just unload a clip of rumors this week, I think is the one way to put it. And let's go with the two, I guess, with Ford connections. We're about to talk about Martin Truex Jr. and his legacy and are some of our favorite moments with him, but it opens the 19 car, which is maybe the best ride open. I think I said on Bringing the Heat last week, the best ride open since the 5 car opened up, or the 4th Hendrick car, essentially, and that went to Kyle Larson. And it seems that Chase Briscoe is the candidate for that. And then you look at the 21, well, it looks like Harrison Burton is out there, and Chase Briscoe was linked to that earlier in the year, and now it appears to be Justin Haley. He said some things where he essentially said he was still locked in with Rick Ware, but that I think was PR talk with, you can't really say anything right now. What are you going to say? I'm leaving them? No. Massie, you can go first with this one. Those two big rumors, I mean, those could be the two best prospects out there right now. And those are probably the two best cars in terms of funding, the 21 and the 19.
Yeah, and Chase Briscoe, that one felt so out of left field. Like when I read that Chase Briscoe, it sounds like was there a tweet that said it could be next week that like an announcement is made, like, so there's some smoke to that fire for sure. But yeah, I think that putting him in that car, you'll find out for sure how good he is, because we haven't seen the full extent of Chase Briscoe's talent and at Stewart-Haas Racing. Like, to be blunt, they haven't. It's not been the Stewart-Haas Racing lately that it was in the mid 2010s. So that's his shot, right? They put him in that car. He needs to go out there and win races, compete for a championship. Anything short is unacceptable when you're in that good of a ride. But what amazing opportunity for him to go from your team shutting down, you're out of a job, to one of the best rides in the field. That's that's a baller move right there. As for Haley, yeah, the whole Rick Ware thing, I mean, honestly, it comes down to what his contract is. We don't know what his contract is. Maybe he is stuck there another year, or take more more headaches than it's worth to get out of it. And I think he does appreciate that Rick Ware kind of took a chance on him. And they've built this thing together. They've really turned this from like a 35th place car to a top 15 car. He's like top 15 every week now. So I don't know. I don't know where his head's at on the whole thing, obviously, but I think Ford, if you're Ford, you recognize that Haley's an incredible talent, and you want to put him in the best ride you could put him in. And the Wood brothers, they're based out of the Team Penske shop. That's a pretty good place to stick a driver if you want them to do something great. So that one, I don't know if he'll for sure go to 21 or not, or stay at Rick Ware, but I do think that the future, regardless, is pretty bright for Justin Haley.
Yeah, these are some really interesting rumors going on. You know who I kind of feel bad for in all this cycle? It's John Hunter Nemechek. He was in the 38 car, and then he was running kind of mid the back of the pack, and he was like, I'm going to drop down and do it all over again, win all these races. And he did it in trucks, he did it in Xfinity, and then he popped up back to Cup a year too early. I think if he was still in Xfinity this year, he might, like doing what he did last year, he might be prime candidate. Instead, I kind of feel like he's almost back where he was before he dropped back again with the Legacy 42. So maybe that team will continue to get better. But yeah, I also, Chase Briscoe, I don't hate it. I I would love to see Noah Gragson go and be teammates with Ty Gibbs. That would be just ultimate content. But I tried to speak that into existence a few weeks ago. It seems like that's not going to happen. It seems like Bass Pro is more committed to their drivers and not the teams, which makes sense, and I respect that. And Chase Briscoe does have the Mahindra backing, and there's a part of me that kind of like feels like, well, maybe Joe Gibbs Racing could look at like maybe there are a few other guys that they could try to pull away that might be slight better options. But then again, like we were saying earlier, I don't know that Chase Briscoe has really gotten a fair shake at like true top tier equipment. I know he won a race with Haas that in 2022, and he's had some pretty solid runs. Like he seems to be a consistent driver to put the car where it should be. He doesn't do too much to try to overperform. But whenever the car is not running well, it is what it is. But I feel like he's really improved the latter half of last season, and then this year, like he's really shown some more flashes of speed with those SHR cars. But so I think it'll be interesting to see him and see what he can do with Gibbs equipment, see if he can get back to victory lane, because that 19 car has been kind of streaky in the next gen as well. It didn't win a race in 2022. They were really good to start out last year, but then fell off again at the end of the season. And then now they've just been kind of, for a Gibbs car anyways, they've been kind of mediocre a little bit. That really only like dominated Richmond. That's the only race I feel like the 19 stood out this year. So it'll be good to see what he can do. And then as far as Justin Haley goes, I know some people are like, is Rick Ware Racing, like, should he even leave them? Like, they're a better ride than the Wood Brothers. Stop it. No, the Wood Brothers car, I feel like, is much better. I'd be more curious to see if Haley, with his ties to RFK, if he tries to switch up those alliances a little bit, because I know Front Row and Penske have a bit of a thing going on now too, right?
Yes.
So that's what I'd be curious to see, which I know RFK is with the Rick Ware Racing guys. So that 21 car, I feel like it's just been forgotten about. So I'll be curious to see if like maybe Justin Haley and Ford, if they're like, hey, let's get you over here with these RFK boys, or if Roush is just like, hey, let's go ahead and just start a third car and put Justin in it this year with the charter stuff. I don't know. There's a ton of options, but yeah.
It's fun, isn't it? It's fun just sitting here getting to talk about it. But let's hit on Chase Briscoe. If he is in fact going to that 19 car, one, it surprises me because you associate Chase Briscoe for an eternity with Ford. I mean, he was with the Biaggi brothers, the 98, and then when Stewart Haas absorbed all of that into the 98 car, he was, in the 77 with Chad Bryant and ARCA. And then he's just been with Ford ever since then. So then all of a sudden, do what?
Brad Keselowski Racing as well.
Yeah, Brad K. As well with him in trucks. So all of a sudden now Chase Briscoe in a Toyota just doesn't seem exactly right, but that might happen. But I think he deserves a great ride. I think he's a great race car driver, and I think he deserves a great ride. So you can't fault them for wanting to put in an established driver into that car. I do agree that it is a surprise because you have these Toyota drivers who have this great either potential or have proven themselves, like Eric Jones. Like Eric could go back to Gibbs and be in a Gibbs car. And then you have John Hunter, who has done the exact thing that, he bet on and is, up until this year in the 42 car, which the 42 car, I don't think it's going to run well with anybody in it right now. Mm-hmm. So it's not a good barometer of how he's going to run. So I feel bad for those guys. And I feel good for Chase Briscoe because I think that he's going to run well in the 19. I think he is going to, be a championship contender, a playoff contender, a contender for wins. And then the 21 car, that's weird, man. That's a weird, like, where is Justin Haley going to end up? Because that was it was a leap from him to go from Colleague and that team to Rick Ware, who was a perennial, potentially last place every week car, and now runs this well with it. So it's, these are business decisions, and sometimes you make the right ones, sometimes you make the wrong ones. And we get to sit back and talk about it, and it's kind of fun to watch. So I hope for guys like Chase that it works out for them. And I think Haley, he's shown that he can elevate a team. Like, he's shown that he can, wherever he goes, he's going to elevate that team. So you would expect the 21 car, if he gets in it next year, to go from running 25th to in that, Justin Haley this year range of the mid teens potentially. And then maybe, top tens. And what a good speedway racer he is. He could pull off a win at Daytona, Talladega, or maybe at Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, both guys, I think they jump into their rides, their expectations increase. Like Haley, it's making playoffs. For Briscoe, I'd say it's round of 8, because realistically, to make that jump and say go get the round of 4 is just probably too difficult. Plus, he'd probably be the 4th best in his organization going in, just because you have Denny, you have Ty, you have so on and so forth. But I mean, it seems like NASCAR values Chase Briscoe's talent a lot, which we've seen. I mean, he won it. He's won at the Cup Series, and it wasn't at a super speedway. It was at Phoenix. He seems to be a very likable person. I mean, there's nothing again. Like, all my interactions with him have been great. I think his story is great. He's really grinded his way to this point in NASCAR, and I think it fits. And then you look at down the list. I didn't mention them, but it looks like Barry and who's the other person? Custer, not Custer. Ryan, not Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece is
Noah.
No. Ryan and Custer. Yeah, you're right. Barry and Custer seem to be destined for FRM front row. I'm trying to remember all this, man. I don't.
Yeah.
My brain don't work sometimes.
You need that meme from a few weeks ago.
Let's just. I'm like
naming off Stewart Haas race car drivers.
I feel like I could be Roy right now at the U.S. Open, just frustrated at myself. But I think this is of it now that the 19's opened. It's opened Pandora's gate in terms of, which has been the reporting all along, of what could happen with silly season. And I think if Briscoe goes to the 19, it's a really good coup by Toyota. Ironic, given that Toyota's built this massive pipeline and decides to build take the only pipeline driver Ford has had in the last decade. It feels like but ultimately I think they're good fits, and I think ultimately they will work out. So moving to our fun bonus topic, as we're joined by Brandon Brown, the general manager of South Boston, as our guest this week. Reminder, the Thunder Road Harley-Davidson 200, the first leg of the Virginia Late Model Triple Crown, is at South Boston on June 29th. Before we get to Martin Truex Jr. and what some of our favorite memories of him are, update the draft. Tom had his personal worst week at 84 points, bringing his totals to 2181. I'm currently sitting in third. I had the second worst week, but gaining on Tom. I'm at 2162. Massie still has the lead at 2297, and Brian finally got a win this year at 130. So he finally got a win, but one of his drivers won. He got 135 points this week. He's at 2016. He's in last place. All right. So unique circumstances with Martin Truex Jr. Brandon, you actually got to work with MTJ. You tweeted when he announced his retirement. MTJ is one of my favorite drivers I worked with. He was always kind every time I met him. He was gracious with his time and did everything I asked him to do on social media, even though he was covered in slime. Wanted to highlight that. Which, who doesn't love to be covered in slime? I think when King's Dominion was sponsored by Paramount, I got covered in slime a couple of times. But Martin Truex Jr., really one of the most unique careers in NASCAR history. A guy who had this second half resurgence, we don't see in sports. You rarely see a guy who had a better second half of his career than a first half of his career. And really, that's what happened with Truex. Brandon, we'll let you go first because of your personal connections. What is your kind of favorite memory with a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best ever in Martin Truex Jr.?
All right, I'm going to give you 3, but they're 3 short ones.
Go ahead. You got time.
The number one that sticks out to me in my head obviously is the sliming. We were when I worked at Chicagoland Speedway as the digital marketing guy. That was the cute way of saying I ran their social media. I was in Victory Lane when he won the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles race, and Nickelodeon slimed him. And of course, like I'm standing there getting the video and stuff. Until I got rid of those shoes, I had green slime on those shoes from the sliming of Victory Lane, essentially. But that day was I think it was the second race in a row at Chicago. Martin had won, and just the time that he took with every single person in Victory Lane that day, like, I mean, he's just like, you could tell, like, it's like, get me out of this fire suit right now. But of course he's got to do his media and all the stuff in Victory Lane. That was the way that he was every time that I talked to him. So there was that time. There was a time when I moved on to Richmond and did the same job there. We took Martin on a media tour of DC. And of course, we did a lot of social media. We went around and did all the news stations and different spots in DC to promote the upcoming Richmond race. Then he goes and wins the race. And so in Victory Lane, he's doing his thing with all the stuff. And it's my turn to go up to him. And when it's my turn, he's like kind of looking this way. And he just looks at me. He's like, "Brandon, what's up, dude? How you doing?" And then he just kind of pats me on the shoulder. And then that's that video that I posted in that tweet. He does, the little, "Hey, we just won the race." The fact that he just remembered that interaction with me and talking to me in those moments, like, he always was just like super cool. I've only had a few negative reactions with drivers when I'm doing that stuff. Most people are just like either neutral or really, really inviting, but he's at the top of the top of the top in terms of best interactions. Whenever I had to ask him, "Hey, Martin, can you take this selfie video? Hey, Martin, can you do this thing on social media?" Like, they get asked that all the time. And he was always so super ridiculously cool every time I talked to him.
Massie, you want to go next?
Man, I got to follow.
We're not going to beat that, but
Yeah, none of us are beating any of those. But no, I was going to say that it's a little bit of a negative one, I guess, on his part. But he did win the regular season championship that day. I'm talking about 2017. He's dominating Richmond, and the Richmond's the cutoff race at that point for the playoffs. And late in the race, Kyle Larson wrecks him. And Truex afterwards is given the regular season trophy and just has the meanest look on his face. He was not thrilled at all, because he was still just focused on Kyle Larson, just wrecked him for the win. And it was Larson that wrecked him, right?
I think it was Hamlin.
Larson won the race.
Larson won the race. That's right. Who was it? It was Hamlin.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, so he's
old man memories just flowing.
But who cares about who wrecked him? It's the picture that's the thing that lasts a million years. Just him.
Wait, was Brandon there to have to help take the photo?
No, that was a year before I moved to Richmond. I was still at Chicagoland, so I was not there.
You got lucky. Okay. I'll go next, and I'll let the youngin go last. To me, I just think how poetic he was. He won his championship on the day that Dale Jr. raced his final race. Like, those two are forever entwined, because Dale obviously gave Truex his start. They're so close. Like, we know their personal relationship, but it's that moment. Dale is Truex keeps saying, "Where's Dale? Where's Dale?" And then they finally get that embrace. And maybe as a guy who was a big Dale Jr. fan, and that was a very emotional race for me, because growing up a Dale Jr. Growing up a Dale Jr. fan, as I can peek my shoulder over here, and then having Truex win, and if you follow Jr. enough, their relationship well enough and how close they are. I think it was very, very poetic that those two are ever going to be forever twined together. And the fact that he won the championship, it was Dale's last race. I mean, you truly can't like that's a perfect script. Like it's a really a perfect script. Add in the fact that it was a single car team essentially, and like him and Cole Pern built it to what it was, and everything that goes with Furniture Row. But that day at Homestead where Truex finally got it done, it I know it's probably the easy one, but still to me is where I have to go.
Yeah, that would have. That's probably my top moment. But the other moments that I was thinking of have to go to that race in 2016, the Coke 600, that he just absolutely dominated. I think he led like all but like 8 laps. Was it something like? It was some incredibly crazy number for the race being that long of how much he dominated. And I know that race was kind of boring at points to watch, but like once it finished, it was like, okay, like this is actually kind of cool. And then also his win in 2015, I believe, the first one with Furniture Row Racing, that was also like that season, because he did a lot that season, and that was the first year they really put Furniture Row on the map, because they got the win with Regan Smith a few years before, and then they improved their running position with Kurt Busch, but then I guess it was 2015 when he won Pocono, right? Or was that 2014?
It was 15.
Yeah,
15. He made the championship for that
year. That's where I was going with, is because that year he won that race, but then he was so good in the Chevys before they even moved to Toyota that he made the championship for and had a run at it. So I think those are two other ones that stick out in my mind, aside from the epic poetic championship where he was finishing off Kyle Busch there at the end.
Yeah, that Coke 600 was like his breakout moment. I feel like for the second half of his career, it was just like, hey, I'm about to dominate a lot of races.
It's like that Darlington race he won, and he goes, Fox plays the audio, is like, that's an ass whipping, boys.
Yeah. But Trey, you talking about the Dale Jr. connection did spark a memory that it just was way back in there.
Shocker.
And it's the fact that I was at his first race. It wasn't his debut. He'd run some Xfinity Busch Series races for his dad's team before that. But his first race with Chance 2 was at Richmond, the spring of 2003. Yeah.
Wasn't it when he rode the wall, right? Was that the race?
No, it was the next time I believe he rode the wall. But this time he went out there, he showed a lot of speed, and then the transmission broke. Or something broke on the car, and he fell out the race. And I just remember that, at that time, if you were going to a NASCAR race, like if something happened to Dale Jr. and he fell out the race, it made traffic a lot easier leaving. Because half the crowd got up and left just like that. And at that Busch Series race that day, when Truex fell out, a huge chunk of the crowd got up and left. And I'll never forget that. I was like, man, that's the Dale Jr. effect. Just by putting another guy in his car, he's still having that impact. So, yeah.
Also, of course, remember Martin Truex Jr. does hold the record for most home races, like tracks at his home track.
Hey, and he did.
Like 6.
I love the story of him and Dale Jr. playing video games and discovering side drafting. That's another, like, maybe not an on-track moment, but that's another cool kind of little nugget from Martin Truex Jr.'s career.
What a great career. I mean, I don't think there's anything else we can say. First ballot Hall of Famer, won, every accolade you could give him, he's deserved. So moving so that will do it for this podcast. Brandon, before we get on out of here, I will let you I want you to plug everything with South Boston. We appreciate you giving us an hour. I know your girlfriend's patiently waiting for your callback, so we will let you plug the race coming up at the end of the month and anything else you want to do with South Boston.
Sure. Well, number one, I appreciate you guys for having me. It's a fun conversation. I could BS with you guys all day. But I mean, this will be my first Thunder Road Harley Davidson 200 as the GM. I think I sat with Massie at one point in the stands.
I'm sorry.
At this race a few years ago, as a matter of fact. So
I think I was with you when you had your first bologna burger. Is that right?
Were you sitting there when Elliott Sadler was giving me crap about how I ate it wrong? You were sitting there?
I remember that.
So if you may indulge me real quick, I got a
story. Go ahead.
I got a story before I plug the rest of the race. So I had been to South Boston a couple of times, but I didn't get a bologna burger. And of course, it's the quintessential food of South Boston Speedway. So I had gotten to know Elliott Sadler through iRacing and COVID and stuff, and sim seats and other things. So I had been talking to him, and I'm like, hey, I tweeted at him, about to have my first bologna burger, and then I got it, and the nice lady at the window said, would you like lettuce and tomato on this bologna burger? And I was like, sure. And so I tweeted it at Elliott, and he ripped me a new one. He's like, that is not the way you eat a bologna burger. I will tell you I can't remember exactly what he said. You can probably go find the tweet, but it's like, that's not the way to eat a bologna burger. You're a disgrace, essentially. So I physically went back and got a bologna burger with peppers, onions, and mustard, and ate the thing. And Massie was right there to experience my shame, essentially.
So that's how you properly eat a bologna burger: peppers, onions,
yes,
and
with
mustard.
Yes.
Well, tomatoes are disgusting. So
You gotta do the grilled onions.
Yes, you can't, not just grilled. They're grilled peppers and onions. I get a piece of cheese with mustard, no mayo, just mustard. So that's the way. And he gets a double. He gets a double bologna burger. Now I can't handle that on race day because I'm running around. I got to have, I can't be like, sitting around like a fan.
Welcome, race fans.
No. So I get a bologna burger per race. So anyway. Get you a bologna burger when y'all come to South Boston Speedway, because it is our quintessential food, the world famous Sobo bologna burger. But yeah, next Saturday, June 29th, the Thunder Road Harley Davidson 200, the best in late model stock car racing. The drivers are going to be here. A ton of the Cars Tour folks have already registered. Bobby McCarty, Brendan Butterbean Queen are already on the entry list. We're expecting, Carson Quapple, quite a few others from the Cars Tour to join us. And then they're going to be going up against the most competitive field of local NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series late models in the country. We've got Peyton Sellers and Blake Stallings and Kyle Dudley and Mike Looney. These guys have been putting on a show for us. Stacy Purrier, Jacob Borst, all year long here. And I'm going to be interested to see if our guys can outdo the Cars Tour guys and girls, because it's going to be one heck of a show. So get your tickets, southbostonspeedway.com. If you get them right now, they're $20. If you get them at the gate, they're $25. So get them early. And gates will open at 10 o'clock. Practice from 1 o'clock on, autograph session, fireworks show at the end of the night. I mean, it's going to be ripping and roaring here in South Boston, Virginia, on the 29th.
Sounds like a plan. So South Boston, June 29th, the first leg of the Virginia Short Track Triple Crown. Brandon, thanks so much for joining us this week. We appreciate it.
We appreciate you back.
Caleb, thank you. Massie, thank you. They write stuff for the website. I chat a little bit. You'll see Massie's face tomorrow I guess Thursday now, with Bringing the Heat with Brian Nolan. He's on that, plus his interview with Brett Moffitt. So check that out where you get your podcast, or subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Front Stretch. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Happy